Ladies and gentlemen, there's an infamous player named Spider who has been dominating Valorant in a unique way. You see, Spider is a shotgun one-trick. That's right, nearly every chance he gets, he's rocking a judge and he's flying in your backline. Now, at first, you might assume that this guy is like a scrub or he just is noob abusing, but he actually climbed to Immortal 3 using this strat in the closed beta. So let's break down all these insane clips so we can learn how to apply these shotgun tactics in our games. If you like in-depth breakdowns like this, do me a huge solid and smash that sub button. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? So the first question you might be asking is, how does he even pull these crazy stunts off in the first place? Well, you see, Spider is actually abusing one of the strongest aspects about Jett in the first place, and it's the fact that she can be holding unpredictable angles that no other character would potentially hold. Oftentimes, though, players are holding these angles because they can get a kill and easily get out, or if they get flushed with utility, they can get out, but not Spider. He's holding these angles to go all in, full aggression 90% of the time. Essentially, what he's doing is he's holding an angle that normal players wouldn't expect him to hold. He's using the surprise factor and the burst of the judge, and he's killing an enemy, quickly following it up very, very quickly in order to confirm one kill after the next. Now, notice specifically in this clip, after he got the first kill, this is something that he repeats extremely often. He throws down his cloud smoke right where the enemy's body was, and then he tailwinds right out of the smoke. Now, that at first is something that enemies are not going to expect, but it gets even more complex than that because he instantly follows it up with an updraft. Now, the enemy not only sees someone dash out of a smoke unexpectedly, but the updraft means that the enemy doesn't quite know exactly where Spider's going to be at any given moment, and flicking straight above you is an incredibly hard shot to flick to. Now, the important thing about the judge is the fact that you can fire it multiple times, and it's dead accurate even while you're in the air. So it allows him to make quick work of his enemies while he's technically above them. This is an insane aggressive strategy that reminds me almost like something from like Genji in Overwatch. It is insanely aggressive, and he uses the smoke to kind of hide his tactic, and he moves so rapidly in such an unpredictable way that enemies just have very little time to react to. Even the best players would instinctively flick to the right of them as Jett dashes at them, but then when she goes vertical, it's just so hard to kill her before she gets to line up the shot on you, especially if she ends up right on top of your head. Now, this next clip coming up can teach us a lot as Spider systematically destroys 3 people on the enemy team in really interesting ways. So let's go ahead and break this down too and try to give you some valuable insight into how you can use Jett with a shotgun in your game. So after he uses the zipline to completely abuse the enemy Phoenix, he actually uses his smokes to let him gain space here. It lets him push up safely, and if any enemy comes into his effective range, he can annihilate them there incredibly easy, so he doesn't have to worry about that. Now, notice that he quickly follows up onto this Viper that wasn't paying any attention. He updrafts, falls on top of her, and kills her. And then he does something pretty interesting. He instantly whips out his knife so that he moves far faster, as well as throws out an additional smoke to allow him to take space or take ground on the enemy Omen. Pretty much anytime this guy is navigating from one natural cover to the next, he's always using a smoke to deny LOS from the enemy. You gotta keep in mind, the biggest weakness to running around with the judge everywhere is that you can be shot from farther ranges. But enemies are not gonna be often just blind firing at every single smoke. They just can't afford to. So the fact that he uses this to allow him to take the space matters immensely, and if you ever want to make an aggressive play on Jett, you need to be using a smoke every single time, and according to Spider's play, you should be using it after every kill as well, unless the enemies are already in line for you to follow up on them. Now notice an interesting strategy after he updrafts on this Omen. Instead of the traditional float shoot like he's done before, he actually allows himself to fall incredibly quickly. Now, I think there's 2 big reasons for this. One, he's not directly on top of the enemy, so if the enemy sees her floating, he can easily just track him out of the air and kill him, and he doesn't want that to happen. So there's a distance problem. And 2, it's an unpredictable fast falling movement that allows him to get his feet on the ground and push up on the enemy to kill him. Both these things together paint a picture of how you can mix up how fast you're falling in different scenarios to allow you to better secure kills on enemies with the judge on Jett. Now remember that jumping also doesn't affect your aim hardly at all, and nothing is better portrayed than this clip right here, where he goes behind a box and just multiple times he jumps and shoots the enemy over this box. Now, after you've been watching these clips, you might be asking in a broader sense, what is the actual point of just running around with shotguns? Like, sure, you can make them work, but is there some sort of strategic advantage in just running around with shotguns all the time? Because you're giving up all these insane weapons that can just kill from longer ranges. Well, when looking at Spider's responses from the Reddit thread, something that is actually really cool that he can do often, because most of his playstyle revolves around using shotguns, is if he starts popping off, and even if he doesn't in the later rounds, he can buy for his team very often. You see, sometimes he'll use rifles and things like that, but 90% of the time, he's running shotguns. And because of this, he has a multitude of cash that he can share with his team. Now, this also has a profound effect on economy as a whole. You see, Spider is still really effective on eco rounds, and even if he lost the first round pistol, he still could easily dominate enemies that run something like a Ghost or even a Spectre if they're not adequately playing around him. That gives him a giant X factor that can actually pull through some of these rounds that he has no business winning, and the fact that he could share his eco with his team means that when they get on a roll, he could upgrade a lot of his teammates' weapons for free. He can make sure everyone has all the armor and abilities they need, and he can even get multiple members of his team operators throughout the course of a game, which all adds up to tangible value. All that being said, when moving on to the next core topic of this video, we have to ask the question, what shotgun should you use? You see that he often uses the Judge, but there's a lot of questions that go into, is the Bucky better? Should I be playing with the Bucky instead? Or how good is the Shorty? How useful is that? Well, the reason particularly that he uses the Judge is because it combos extremely well with Jett. The fast fire rate would allow you to easily follow up multiple shots on the enemy and confirm multiple kills in a row, especially in succession. The problem with the Bucky is while it can one-shot, even from longer ranges than the Judge with its alternate fire, after the first shot there is an actual really long delay that can be extremely punishing for a playstyle like this. That also means while the Judge excels at taking on multiple opponents in a row, if you're rocking the Bucky, you really can only afford to take multiple one-on-one engagements and never engage multiple enemies at the same time, which definitely is a mark against it as far as playing for these pop-off moments where you kill multiple people, but it still is usable in the same way that we're going to talk about in the second with the Shorty, in the way that you could potentially wait for enemies and trap them, trading out a kill and upgrading your weapon using a really powerful, consistent 900 credit shotgun that has more firepower than the Shorty, but still wants to accomplish the same goal. But when fighting multiple opponents aggressively, you need the extra firepower of the Judge. Now, as far as the Shorty is concerned, the Shorty can be an extremely powerful weapon because it's only 200 credits, and it's really capable of killing enemies with much better guns, especially when combined with the mobility or LOS blocking of a lot of different characters that we're going to talk about in a second. Now, the key takeaway you need for the Shorty is that there's two ways to use it in every given situation. You could either, one, fire it as you plan to go behind natural cover, giving you enough time to reload the Shorty, or two, make sure you're close enough to the target to where you're guaranteed to finish them off so that you don't end up in those awkward scenarios where an enemy ends up at like, I don't know, 10 health, but you barely don't kill them with your 2 bullets. And then, of course, the giant reload time means you're just gonna die, especially if you don't have a secondary weapon, because that is your secondary weapon, that is your alternate weapon, and you have no other weapon to use. Now, the next big question that you might be asking, especially after this video, is Jett the only character that can use a shotgun to its maximum effectiveness? While yes, I think that in some ways, this hyper-aggressive playstyle, especially the one pictured here, when you're flying at the enemy with all your abilities, that is only a Jett playstyle, unfortunately. But a lot of the fundamentals that we learned from this video can definitely be applied through multiple characters in the game. Specifically, characters with both a way to get in and LOS blocking abilities can definitely get value with the shotgun if you incorporate a lot of these same strategies, like making sure that you never peek enemies from a far effective range, that being the most important. A great candidate for this would most likely be someone like Omen, who could not only teleport behind enemies, but blind them and LOS block them, so I do think that an Omen could actually get a ton of value flanking into enemy backlines or making aggressive plays on shotguns as well. The last best character that, in my mind, is insane with shotguns is actually Viper. That's simply due to the fact she has so much LOS blocking abilities, and her ultimate Viper's Pit is an absolute nightmare to push into, especially if that Viper has a shotgun. She is just gonna annihilate you so fast and there's nothing you could do. For those reasons alone, I do think that Omen, Jett, and Viper are the 3 best shotgun wielders in the entire game. While not every character in the game can use shotguns to their maximum potential, still don't underestimate the power of a Shorty in a clutch scenario. I can't tell you how many times I played a character like Cypher, set up a trap play where an enemy walked into my trap and I just finished them off with a Shorty, instantly grabbed the gun to upgrade. I'm not building my whole character kit around a shotgun, but instead, I'm using a shotgun as a tool in order to actually upgrade my economy by getting an easy pick on an enemy that falls victim to my trap. Anyways, I hope this guide has been extremely helpful for you and you learned how to master just a little bit more about shotguns, and at the very least, you learned some key fundamentals on how to counter shotguns if that's what you want to do in your games. Make sure to blast that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any in-depth VOD reviews just like this one, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, definitely let us know in the comments down below. Anyways, I think that's all we got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time,